Welcome back to the video blog. My name is Adam Daniel Mezei. AdamDanielMezei.com, dispatching from Prague in the Czech Republic. So, let's talk about the Cheonan. The Cheonan is that South Korean Navy Corvette that was sunk on March the 26th, 2010, in which 46 soldiers were killed. There were 104 personnel on board. They recovered 40 of the bodies. Subsequent to that, an international body was established to try to determine the culpability for the sinking, and this was a UN-appointed body with so-called reputable experts who placed the blame squarely upon Kim Jong-il, the North Korean dear leader, on his shoulders, and the North Korean military for launching the torpedo that sunk the Cheonan. The Cheonan was subsequently fished out of the sea, reassembled in a port very close to Seoul, where it was put on display. Ditto for the so-called torpedo that sunk the Cheonan. Of course, they cannot determine the provenance of the torpedo, but it looked pretty intact during the media scrum under its glass casing. Basically, what happened is a pygmy ship, or kind of a miniature midget ship, a Yugo or a Yono class in the North Korean Navy, that shot this South Korean Corvette down, or what's called the Sango class, which is something they used to sort of pick people off of beaches after they drop them on spy missions, or that deliver supplies, either one of those three classes of subs that shot the torpedo. So let's just list the possibilities for who's responsible for the sinking of the Cheonan, because even after the UN-appointed body delivered its findings on May 20th, which was a couple of weeks ago, they really don't have any conclusive answer, especially with the latest findings that the Russians don't agree with the international panel's determinations or their final report. So possibility number one, which appears to be the most likely according to the mass media, which is probably not the most likely, but let's just go with it for a moment. Number one, of course, the North Koreans are responsible for shooting down the Cheonan for some reason, either because there is a power struggle inside the North Korean brain trust, because Kim Jong-il is sick and his son Kim Jong-un, who will probably take over the leadership, is trying to sort of muscle his way into the power position, or for some other reason a rogue element in the North Korean army is responsible for sinking the Cheonan. That's possibility number one. Number two, it's a plot by the South Koreans themselves to blow up their own Navy Corvette in order to instigate some kind of an international incident, or as a means of, declaring war on the North Koreans and then reigniting a second Korean battle, and then that would lead to, a totally changed landscape on the Korean Peninsula, possibly a unification of the country, something totally out of a Hollywood movie. But again, it's just one of the possibilities. Third possibility is South Korea managed to launch a North Korean torpedo that they had kept in their military arsenals since the time of the Korean War in the 50s, and it was shot again by the South Koreans on one of their own ships, which is a variation on the second possibility, sinking the Cheonan. Those are the three possibilities that are being bandied about on the internet, and of course it's a huge conspiracy theory. Nobody knows the answer. And as is the case in most things concerning North Korea, nobody ever knows the conclusive answer to anything that's going on over there. And it's funny because the South Koreans will use practically any bit of this conspiracy stuff online to try to score a propaganda blow against the Kim family. And so you really can't rely on the South Koreans as a neutral source of information. So what are the consequences of the sinking of this particular ship? Well, in one case, it could ignite an incident on the Korean Peninsula. Nobody wants that because, of course, the Americans don't need another battlefront opening up. They would, of course, come to the aid of the South Koreans as advisors. The Russians certainly don't want this going on in their neck of the woods. Neither do the Chinese. It would totally disrupt their plans for the harmonious rise. The Russians don't agree with the findings of the UN panel. I'm thinking because the Russians are leasing port space at the Rujin port, which is in the northeast corner, which is where China meets Russia meets North Korea. So they don't want anything going on disrupting their shipping traffic up there. And of course, the South Koreans don't want a war because naturally their capital is 40 kilometers away from the demilitarized zone, from the DMZ. And if they do win the war, think about all the poor North Koreans that are going to be streaming down from North Korea into South Korea, and what that's going to do to the South Korean economy. So it could not come as anything in life. It could not come at the absolute worst time. What was Kim Jong-il? A very sick, ill, addled from all the benders that he had as a kid and all the hoes that he screwed and all the drugs that he took. What was he doing in China during the so-called secret trip at the beginning of May? Well, he was likely getting a dressing down by President Hu Jintao of the People's Republic of China, and probably getting a good scolding for not keeping closer tabs on his people. And maybe the Chinese just read him the riot act and said, this is how this script's going to play out, and you might have done this, but this is how you're going to do it, or else, because we know how chronic the North Korean situation is. It's always very precarious going on up there north of the 38th parallel. You never know what Kim Jong-il is capable of if pushed into a corner. Does he have nuclear weapons that can take out an entire continent? No, he doesn't. Does he have weapons that can take out an entire city? Yes, let's say that he has weapons that can cause considerable amount of damage. He does not have plutonium-based nukes. He has uranium-based nukes. They're not nearly as deadly, and he doesn't necessarily have a delivery mechanism to fire it really far, but Seoul could take a pretty big hit, and so can Tokyo. So everybody's pretty much on tenterhooks. But of course, here in the Middle Europe, we don't really worry about those things. We spend a lot of our time drinking, complaining, as I look across at my neighbors, and enjoying our angst-ridden days. But that's another story and another video blog for another day. My name again is Adam Daniel Mezei, or the ADM. You can call me ADM. And always I wish for you the best of things. For some reason I'm speaking like Yoda today.